So Hop is Canada's first inner-city compost facility. We collect food scraps from the city's leading food merchants and we transform it into the highest nutrient organic compost in the country. So in one bag of hop, farmers can get the nutrients of 7.6 bags of standard compost. So I've run a recycling company called Green Start for 6 years. We just turned 6. Through recycling with Green Start, I became very familiar with the waste industry. So across Canada, all of our major cities are projected to run out of landfill space within 20 years. So in Calgary, we have about 18 years of landfill space left. Vancouver has 4. Toronto's already out of landfill space and shipping their waste into Michigan. The underlying issue there is that about a third of landfills are comprised of compostable waste. So it's a big kind of waste target that needs to be addressed that historically has really lagged in the country. So that tipped my interest, but the real point of action for me was that my family dog was poisoned by fertilizer in our garden when he was 2. So he accidentally ingested some fertilizer in the strawberry patch, and he was ultimately nursed back to health. But it was an eye-opening experience for me in just recognizing the dangers of using poison to grow our food. So I started researching organic fertilizer alternatives and was disappointed by just the performance of products on the market and wanted to create a high nutrient organic option for people that wanted, healthy people and plants, but healthy pets as well. I think that we can harmonize all those things to have gardens that are kind of holistically beneficial. A lot, yeah. So I would say that Hop is the first true craft compost. So we've delved into ingredient sourcing to ensure that we have the top quality materials entering into the system. Our recipe we have really tight control on, as opposed to this just being a mass public waste drop-off. But the thing that sets us apart the most is our clean tech. So as opposed to our compost just being food rotting outside, it's all contained within sealed and computerized vessels that track compost data every 60 seconds and then automate the compost environment based on the live data to ensure that we have perfect breakdown of materials. So because of the automation, in addition to all of kind of the art and the recipe, there's a lot kind of that distinguishes Hop from conventional compost. Our nutrient value is much higher, our pathogen value is much lower, the product is far more consistent. So taken together, the results are pretty unique. Our first delivery of compost went to Calgary, which is the largest urban farm in Canada. They announced that their crop yields are rising enough to donate an additional 1,125 meals to the food bank over the next 12 months alone. Why compost? The waste imperative, the food growth imperative. I think that compost has the potential to be the next big catalyst for the local food movement. We've seen a big push for farm-to-table food sourcing, but I think the next push needs to be table-to-farm return of food scraps. And I think that by unifying that cycle in one closed loop, that's when we'll have a truly regenerative local food system, which is what we need to see in order to support organic food growth in the future. We want to ensure that we have good farmers in our closed loop. Ideally, the way that Hop will function is to have food merchants being supplied by the same farmers that we supply into. And we're able to control that to some extent through our direct sales. So, be it organizations like Calgary that are supported by Market, that's their lead sponsor. Market is one of our suppliers of food waste. Or, be it the YYC growers. We work with many of the urban farms in Calgary. Together we can hopefully build a food system that looks, nice and is, really functional from an environmental perspective. In conventional farming, regarding fertilizer use. So when I was doing research following Willie's poisoning on fertilizer, the thing that really shocked me is that the risk with fertilizer isn't just in ingesting it. The risk in fertilizer is also atmospheric. So in areas with intense fertilizer use, peer-reviewed scientific studies have shown that there's a 2 times increase in non-Hodgkin lymphoma, which is a blood cancer. There's a 6.7 times increase in brain cancer. So being in an area with intense fertilizer use is the equivalent of being in an area with intense smoking. There's an atmospheric risk that needs to be addressed, and I think that fertilizer is a smart mid-century innovation, but our modern science has moved so far beyond that we need to see health reflected in the kind of products that we use to sustain plant growth. I would caution people in using composts that don't have a great degree of quality control. I think that conventionally we've seen a lot of composts on the market that are made with unvalidated ingredients, with an unvalidated process, kind of mystery materials rotting outside. Without the proper validation going into the product, it's like moonshine. Hypothetically you can get away using it, but it might not have the desired result. So I would encourage an increase in regulations on the composting market and for people to be savvy with what they're using. So Hop's vision is to create a closed loop for every major city across North America. So we started here in Calgary. This is our headquarters. We've since had a zoning change passed to create the country's second inner-city compost facility in Vancouver. So I've been traveling back and forth a lot, which is really exciting, but we're growing really rapidly. There's been a huge demand for the product, and we're just trying to produce as much as we can to actually catch up with the sales interest. So after Vancouver, we'll likely look at Toronto, and then from there, the sky's the limit. So hop has exceptional nutrient value, both from a conventional kind of NPK perspective, also just looking at the organic matter and the biology of hop. It's going to be literally the best option on the market for compost, and that's by third-party lab standards. We can hand over any kind of assessment of our compost, and it will be the industry lead. The safety of hop from a health and environmental perspective is also really amazing. This is a fertilizer alternative, so clean you can eat it without issue. So I would say that it's likely the best option for people who are concerned with the health of their children or their pets that may be exposed to the growing area that they have around their homes. One thing to say to the consumer, I would say that organic is possible. I think that a lot of people have been making the same purchase decisions that they've just inherited through generations. It seems like a natural move to go into a garden center and buy a chemical fertilizer. I think that to an increasing extent, we see organic seeds, organic compost, just all sorts of different organic approaches becoming readily accessible to the consumer. And I would encourage that transition as a possible thing that can be brought to a hobby farm, a household garden, a large-scale farm. I think that organic is becoming increasingly possible and increasingly affordable.